Hello, hello,
Hey,
everybody.
everybody.
Welcome to What's the Plan? We're going to let people stream on in, but please let us know where you're coming in from. We have been gone for a week. We want to know what's up. What's been up with y'all?
We missed you.
We did. We really did
We,
miss you.
yeah, no,
Well,
doesn't feel like a week if we're
I
not
know.
here.
Well, it's been we did 30 weeks in a row, nonstop, and I love it. I mean, this is just a time to really feel like we're connecting with the movement and connecting with folks who are organizing everywhere. So I hope folks got a nice little break. I did see got a couple emails from Indivisible group leaders who were like, "Hey, what's up? We're on. We're trying to find
I
what's
know.
the plan." And I'm really, really sorry. We tried to send a cancellation ahead of time, but it's great to see everybody here. We'll give people a minute to join up, and then we'll get in. Thanks, Deborah won from Boulder, Colorado. I think it's the first time Boulder has won the first, but
Yeah,
we
Boulder.
got Boulder, we got Annapolis, we got South.
Moscow, Idaho.
Oh, Moscow's here.
hmm
Great. New
North
York, Madison,
Dakota, New
Wisconsin.
Jersey, Howard County, Maryland. Love that. San Diego, Orange County, Missoula, Montana.
They say we look rested, Leah. That's a
They say,
compliment.
there we go.
Lila is sleeping better right now, and maybe it has to do with having taken a week off. Zeke always sleeps well, though. That's the
Yeah.
great thing about him. One of many great things. Okay, Massachusetts. We've got California. We've got Florida. It's yeah. Keep on streaming in. Introduce y'all yourselves, y'all. This is a pro-democracy movement built on people power. I'm going to tell a little anecdote actually once we get into the Texas news because I was really struck by it. I think there's this power that comes from folks who aren't used to participating in a big like multi-thousand Zoom like this because I mean, I think most people are used to being on Zooms with a few dozen or maybe a few hundred people, and to be part of something that's so big, you really just get this sense that like, oh wow, there's something building here, and
Going,
I love
it's
it. I
moving.
love it. Should we get started? We're a couple minutes in.
Let's go.
Okay. Well, hey everybody. Welcome to What's the Plan? I'm Ezra.
Leah.
We are the married co-founders of Indivisible. We've forgotten to say that a few times, so this is why we're like leaning in so close to each other on the Zoom. But look, if you're here, you're here to fight for democracy. You're fighting against the fascist. You believe that people power, peacefully organized, but strongly organized in communities all around the country, is the way forward. That's how we do this. Indivisible is a believer in group-based organizing. These groups are made up of individuals, but they're all volunteers building their own communities all around the country. They're around 2,500 now, just about everywhere. While we've been gone, groups have been forming. Since we've been here, groups have been forming. That the idea of group-based power is rooted in this understanding of how a republic works, which is there is political power. It relies on constituents and normal everyday people everywhere. Individual people have very little power. The institutions, the leaders, the politicians, they can run right over them. But groups of people organized effectively with good strategies and good tactics, they actually affect change. And that's not just some hypothetical idea. This is what we've been doing for 8 years now. This is how we've organized two of the largest single day protests in American history in the last few months. This is how we're going to continue to organize against the fascist threat. So I always like to start this by just celebrating, and I'll do it really quickly because we got a lot celebrating the new local indivisible groups because they're forming every single day and I love to see it. So blue, red, purple states, I'm going to go through, give these folks some love. If you're in the chat, I hope you feel it. If you're joining for the first time, you can see these groups are forming everywhere. We got Karen from Queen Creek, Santan Valley Indivisible in Queen Creek, Arizona. Christine from Indivisible
Elysian Valley?
Elysian Valley in just in
Funny.
LA. We've got Margaret from Indivisible Tallahassee, Florida. We've got Manon from Indivisible Highland Park in Highland Park, Illinois. Greg from Saco Bay Indivisible in Saco, Maine. We've got LA from Indivisible Central, Mississippi. I'm going to mispronounce this name, Leah. Kosha,
Koshuko? Koshushka?
Koshiko? Kosciuszko? Okay,
We
some
should have
homework
checked
for
on
us. We will find out how to pronounce Kosciuszko, but it's in Mississippi and apparently in central Mississippi. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Christine from Beartooth Indivisible in Red Lodge, Montana. Amy from Indivisible Harrison, New York in Harrison, New York. Peter from Indivisible
Minona?
Monona in Wisconsin, and Warren from Friendly City Indivisible. Isn't that lovely?
That's
Friendly
awesome.
City Indivisible in Fairmont, West Virginia. How is that? Arizona, California, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Mississippi, Montana, New York, Wisconsin, West Virginia. That's just a selection of the new indivisible groups that have
From the
formed
state.
since we've actually in the
In
last
2 weeks.
weeks.
Yeah,
It's since
sorry.
we've last met. There are more forming every day. If you're like, well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Welcome. Start your indivisible group. Get some friends together. This is fun. We're doing it together. Leah, what are we doing here though? Why are we here together for What's the Plan?
Well, this is What's the Plan. It is the weekly space where we talk through what is happening and we talk through what we're doing about it. It is going to be mostly Q&A, overwhelmingly live. If you are submitting a question, you can do that via the Q&A function at the bottom of your toolbar. If you are a member of an Indivisible group, indicate what Indivisible group you are with when you ask that question. We love to shout you out. People are going to upvote the question, so you can upvote with the little thumbs up thing, the questions that you want to see us answer. We're going to take them mostly from off the top with a few like editorial judgments to make sure we're covering different topics as we go. This is going to be recorded, and so if you want to watch it again, if you want to send it to your friends, you will get the opportunity to see that or have that. We're going to send all of the links and the recording out to you in an email after the call. So if you miss a link because the chat box is going really, really fast, don't worry. We will be sending all of the CTAs and all of the information links that we post out when we send that email. Final word on respect. This is a tough space sometimes. We are talking about incredibly scary stuff. We're talking about incredibly personal stuff. It can be easy. It can be easy to turn on each other. We don't want to do that here. We want to support each other. This is a big pro-democracy movement. We are organizing together. We are organizing in solidarity with each other. We may disagree on tactics and strategy, but we are still in it together. So this is going to be a constructive space where we hold each other up.
Leah and I disagree on tactics and strategies all the time, and
And
yet here we are, and we're here,
married.
and we're married, and we're doing this together. I'm seeing some people say echo, echo, echo.
Interesting.
Let me know. Can people give me a thumbs up emoji if it's sounding okay to you, or a heart emoji or something?
Maybe.
Oh, I'm getting tons of thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, I'm saying if there's an echo on your end, I think it might be your Zoom. So I check out your Zoom settings, but we're gonna barrel on through. One of the pieces of feedback, Leah, that we've gotten in the past when we've asked people how these should go is they want us to spend less time purely on like big, here's what's happening in the news kind of soliloquies.
Yes.
And so we're taking that feedback and we're going to try to get directly into questions. And instead of doing a big, here's what's happening in the news, we want to focus just on, hey, here are the action items. Here's what we're actually doing. Given this is what's the plan. So what is the plan? Here's the plan. Here are the things that we're actually doing. Leah, we just finished up the final number 3 in a 3-part series on strategic non-cooperation. This is the 1 million rising trains that just finished up last night. Talk to us, what are the action items coming out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, if you have not started your series of community gatherings to replicate this content, to replicate these conversations in your own community, it is not too late. If you are already in the process, if you've had one, time to sign up and have your second. If you haven't had one yet, not too late to sign this up. We want to make sure that we are reaching people who will tune in to a Zoom and people who will come to have that conversation in somebody's living room, but maybe aren't going to spend their Friday night on a Zoom. So first, sign up. We've got, I believe, over 1,800 on the books right now. We want to get even more folks across the country having those conversations in person and using those as ways, particularly if you run an invisible group, using that as a way to bring more people into your group, onboard more folks, get them up to date on the strategy, get them even more bought in. So
Yep.
That's one. That's CTA 1. Second, ground avelo. Okay, this is going to be something that I know there are folks who are experts on this on the call because there are a bunch of Indivisible groups who have been throwing in on this already. Avelo Airlines is a commercial airline that has been participating and taking contracts to do deportation flights on behalf of the Trump administration as part of our shift to targeting the enablers of the Trump administration, targeting those pillars that are upholding and facilitating the agenda of the Trump administration. We are collectively signing on to ground avelo. So that's going to mean direct pressure on airports. That's going to mean pressure on universities and businesses that have partnerships with Avelo. That's going to mean directly outreach or direct boycotting their flights. And it's going to mean outreach to their leadership and their board. Sign up, go to our website at groundavelo.org for all the different ways that you can get involved, events that might be near you. If they've got flights out of the area that you are at, get involved. Additionally, signs for solidarity. So this is our push to move more people into visual, outright defiance of the administration and their mass deportation agenda. Signs for solidarity is us going into our local business owners, our local community spaces, and asking them to post a sign that says some version of ICE is not welcome here, immigrants are welcome here. we love our neighbors, right? We've got a bunch of different versions of that sign. We've got some really cool designs. You can pick which one makes the most sense in your community, but the basic idea is you want to make sure businesses know that they can post a sign. First of all, they can post a sign saying that there is an employee-only area that ICE cannot access. So making sure that people understand that they can create a zone in their business that is protected from ICE, or that ICE does not have access to. And then second, having that visual demonstration of defiance. We want to get those in as many windows, in as many storefronts across the country as possible for a couple of reasons. The first, one, we just want to make sure as many people as possible see a regular sign that ICE is not welcome. ICE is not part of our community. Immigrants are part of our community. ICE is not, right? Make sure that those signs are everywhere and that people see them everywhere they go. And two, we want to get as many people off the sidelines as possible. Asking like a local business to put up a sign, it might feel like a small ask, but it's actually part of the process of pulling more people into a meaningful demonstration of non-compliance with the administration. So that's Signs for Solidarity. And we've got links. You can sign up, you can get the toolkit, you can sign up to start distributing those in your community.
Okay,
Over to you.
so community gatherings, Avelo, Ground Avelo, Signs for Solidarity. I can't wait to be walking down DC or some other town center and seeing these signs everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to have a real impact. It's going to impact the culture. So one thing I've seen it mentioned a couple times in the chat. Uh, who here was on that training last night and saw Texas State Rep Gene Wu? Did folks see him? I was just taken aback. It is so rare that you have a politician join a big webinar like this and you actually break through emotionally to that politician where they are taken aback. This guy got teary-eyed by seeing the number of people who were showing up. And he said it himself. He was expecting maybe a few hundred people. We maxed out at 20,000. We couldn't have more people on. And you could see him, somebody who is out there on the front lines fighting against these fascists, fighting against this power grab, feeling alone at times, feeling like he is on the front lines, and to come into a meeting like that and see 20,000 people asking, what can I do? How can I show up? I was blown. I was moved by him being moved. It just felt like such a real moment in this fight. And so I'm going to talk about Texas redistricting just for a sec, both because I'm biased as a Texan, but also because this is the front lines of this fascist power grab. The Republicans understand that the voters are pissed off at them. They understand that a blue wave is coming. So what are they doing? They're trying to rig the maps. They're trying to rig the maps. And so the Texas reps are bravely breaking quorum, preventing them from passing the maps, and asking for other Democrats who actually have control of the states in these Democratic trifectas in places like Illinois and California and New York and New Jersey, asking them, go on offense, help fight this fight with us. And it's working, y'all. It is working. Like when we talk about courage being contagious, we're not talking like it's got to be Gene Wu from now until the end. Like it's just him and we're all behind him. I love the guy. It's great to see about their fighting. But the theory of courage being contagious is you have somebody or some group of folks take a big action and then it inspires other folks in the ecosystem to fight as well. And this is what we're seeing with Gavin Newsom out there talking about punching back with new maps in California, where we see action in Illinois or in New York. We see momentum that wasn't there a month ago. It is there now as a direct result of these Texas Dems showing up in a big way. So Indivisible is throwing in for this Saturday mobilization. They're asking us to show up and prove to the world that actually they have support. It's not just these few dozen Texas reps, but the whole country is coming together to back them up. So this is Stop the Trump Takeover. We're partnering with Texas for All, Public Citizen, a few other organizations. They're running it, but we're trying to provide support. So if you don't have Saturday plans yet, please show up. If you do have Saturday plans, maybe move those to Sunday and show up instead on Saturday. We want to demonstrate that we're really out there. Last thing I'll say before we get to the questions, an issue that has just blown up over the course of the last week or so, this DC occupation that we're seeing. For folks who are tracking this closely, I think you know this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. That they are militarizing DC. They are cracking down on residents. This is in one sense, it's just ridiculous because they are just bothering people who are on the side of the street and they're stopping cars. But it's a rehearsal. It is not going to remain ridiculous. It's going to turn pretty dark, is what it looks like. We heard, here's a direct quote from the Republican chair of the Oversight Committee, Comer. He said, quote, "We're going to support doing this in other cities if it works out in Washington, D.C. We spend a lot on our military, and our military has been in many countries around the world for the past 2 decades, walking the streets trying to reduce crime. We need to focus on the big cities in America now." This is the chair of the Oversight Committee. They are not planning to just limit this to LA. They're not planning to just limit this to DC. They are planning to take this show on the road to blue cities all across the country, which they're going to be able to do because they've just given themselves $171 billion for their secret police. Now, I also though want to call out Indivisible Danville, Kentucky, because at the same time Comer is talking to national press about how they're going to go and terrorize cities around the country, we have Indivisible Danville, Kentucky, going outside Comer's office in Kentucky, asking him to hold a town hall because he's hiding from his own constituents. I love that. I love that. We can't let these Republicans hide. We can't let them just show up on Fox News and make threats against blue cities. We need to be showing up in support. So, what I would recommend to folks, if you're seeing what's happening in DC and you're like, what can I do? There are two things depending on who and where you are. If you are in the DC area, check out Free DC. Free DC, we're backing up. They're doing legitimately inspiring work. They are organizing on the ground. They are figuring out which tactics and strategies make the most sense for folks in DC. So check out Free DC if you're in that area. Join up with the work that they're doing. We're trying to back them up as much as we can. If you're outside of DC and you've got a Democratic representative or senator, what Free DC is asking is for folks to get in touch with their Democratic representation to speak out on this issue and not just speak out. They're going to be back in DC. Recess is over. Your representatives will be in DC. Film some videos, walk around town, show what's going on, and raise the alarm. They can do this now if you've got a Democratic representative. It's an easy ask. They should do it. They just need to be asked. So please make that ask and back up Free DC. Leah, anything on that before we go to Q&A?
I'll just add, like, if you've been on with Indivisible for a long time, you have heard us talk about how unjust the current, like, the DC situation is, right? Like, this is an incursion on home rule. This is an attack on DC's autonomy. It's part of a series of attacks, right? In the budget process, or in the funding fight earlier this year, the government withheld $1 billion from DC of their own tax dollars, blowing a massive hole in the city's budget, huge problems for schools, huge problems for basic social services everywhere. And they have a general perception that they are able to mess with DC without political consequence. And so there's like a really important piece of this, which is, do Democrats get heat from their own people for being muted in this moment? There's a real, this is a very directly an attack on DC, on its residents, on Black political power, and on a city that is perceived as predominant, or in a city that is dominantly Black and brown. Democrats have to hear from their people around the country that they are outraged about this in order to understand that they have to show up. And in order for the media to cover this as a conflict, right? Or as a controversy, right? Because otherwise, too many people will uncritically adopt this administration's absolutely ridiculous framing about the need to assert control because of crime, quote unquote crime, right? We actually have to contest that, and we need Democrats out in front contesting it.
It should go without saying, and I'm seeing it in the chat a lot. Obviously, DC should be a state.
Yeah.
And obviously, nobody in the Democratic Party should have any question about that. And the second that we have a Democratic trifecta at the national level, one of the first pieces of legislation ought to be making DC a state.
Right.
That should go without saying. It was one of our top campaigns in 2021 when we clinched the trifecta, was trying to make DC a state. And were it not for folks like Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, I think we might have gotten there.
Yep.
Okay, with all that said, let's move on to our questions. Yeah, Leah?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay. Top voted question is a question near and dear to my heart. It's a tactical question, Leah, from Molly. Asks, I get a lot of petitions asking for my signature. How effective are they compared to protesting, boycotting, or other forms of non-cooperation?
Yeah, so here's what I would say. A petition is like the lowest possible level of an ask, and it can be effective in some situations when it's targeting targets that for some reason are responsive to that kind of pressure. So, for example, I've seen people use petitions to target like a local school board, and the local school board is not used to getting, 10,000 people yelling at them. And so that actually can be effective. What we do not encourage is petitions for elected officials who don't even have a way of, for example, figuring out whether you're from their district. They just get a list of names, and as far as they're concerned, they don't even know if those are their constituents. So it's not a very useful tactic when you have, an elected official or the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court does not, they're fully aware that what they're doing is unpopular right now. They don't care. That's kind of our whole problem, right? So I would say there are situations in which a petition might be useful. Most of the time, it's actually a tactic to make sure that you're on a list so that you can be asked for a higher order ask. And that's part of why we don't use them very much in our own efforts. What are you?
I would be more direct. I think
You're being more.
I think
I'm trying
online
to be.
petitions are generally bullshit. I'll just be blunt with you. I think usually online petitions are used to harvest your contact information, your email address, and your cell phone number so that you can be asked for money. Like that is the main purpose of an online petition. Leah is right though, they can be used for good in certain circumstances, but my number one critique of online petitions isn't even that they're like not that effective. My main concern is that they purport to be more effective than they are. And I think there's a whole generation of people who have seen online petitions and think of that as activism, think of that as democracy, and then don't see any change and think, oh, well, this is all not worthwhile. None of this is worth engaging in. And so it's not just that they're not very effective, it's that they disincentivize further action if used inappropriately. To Leah's point, there are exceptions to this rule. There are smart uses of petitions. There are moral and ethical ways to use online petitions. So it's not, I don't want to fully paint with a broad brushstroke, but I think the use of online petitions as a substitution for real strategic and tactical thinking is just rampant throughout the ecosystem. And that's why you don't see it a lot from us. Okay,
And
that's how I really
that's
feel.
how Richard feels about this. Yeah.
It's a little known thing. The very first when we launched the Indivisible guide in the very first back when it was Twitter, the very first tweet was online petitions aren't going to solve this. We need to do something more. So it's near and dear to my heart. Okay. Stephen asks, what are some strategies you use to stay focused and grounded when you see Donald Trump pull authoritarian stunts with the National Guard and the military like he's doing in DC?
Yeah. You want to take that?
So I'm pretty action oriented, is what I would say. So my main question when something bad happens in the world, pushed by Donald Trump or one of the MAGA folks or some institution, I want to understand the issue, but I really want to understand like what can we do about it? A lot of bad stuff is happening a lot of the time, and if you focus in on every single thing, I mean that would lead me to burnout. And so I'm constantly on the hunt for is this something that we can impact in some positive way? Maybe that's a dodging the question, but like that is how my mind works. It's like, okay, this bad thing happened. Do we have an angle here where we can actually do some good? Is there an organizing moment here? If so, what is it? And is it the top priority that should push something else out? So when it comes to, for instance, the DC mobilization, I think there's actually a lot good that we can do. This is the front lines of the fight. They are testing out DC. So I am super curious about great. How can we plug in a way that is respectful to the folks who are doing the local organizing now and have been doing it for a long time? But how can Indivisible be a value add here? And so the way that looks behind the scenes is a lot of conversations with the folks locally who are organizing and trying to plug in our national infrastructure into that way.
I think that all makes sense. I think fundamentally we're here to try to figure out where we've got leverage and how we organize and how we fight back in moments when they are escalating, right? And how do we make authoritarian stunts like this backfire for them
Yeah.
politically, right? Fundamentally, when they escalated in Los Angeles, people in Los Angeles pushed back on the ground and organized really heroic pushback, and we collectively came out for No Kings. And you know, Donald Trump's approval ratings fell. They fell in general. They fell on immigration, where he was trying to crack down and show himself to be a strongman. They have not recovered since then. That is actually the work collectively of an organized and strategic movement that was able to seize that story and turn it from Donald Trump is strong on immigration to Donald Trump is terrorizing communities and out of control. Like that was actually a collective effort. And I think in this moment with DC, with further escalations in cities, what we've got to do is similarly have the story coming out of this not be Donald Trump is, seizing control of the DC police because of crime, but this is part of an authoritarian crackdown. This is an effort to consolidate control over the capital city in order to restrict protest, in order to crack down on Black political power, in order to further consolidate his control over over places that politically don't agree with him.
I'm seeing a lot in the chat, Leah. Normally we
Hmm.
don't uh, um, shift away from the Q&A like this so much, but I am seeing like a fair amount of like, I'm feeling hopeless and like it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's going the right direction. And I think that is by design. That is by design. This is how the fascists effectively take over. They make you think that it is hopeless, that they are all powerful, and they also are pushing on so many fronts that it is overwhelming. So I don't know if you need to hear this, but I will tell you this. It is not your responsibility to fight and win every single fight that is out there. There is a lot of injustice in the world and in this country right now. There are a lot of threats from this administration, and you're not going to be able to contribute to every single fight that's out there. And in fact, based on who you are and where you are and what the political realities in your geography are, some fights are going to make sense for you and other fights are not, and that's okay. This is not going to be won by each of us doing everything. It's going to be won by each of us doing something. So figuring out when we put out the new Indivisible guide after the last election, a big part of it was identify your political geography, what your leverage is, and focus there. So when we're talking with the Hawaii groups or that they've got a bad Democratic representative who they're trying to push or get rid of. That's great. That's a good activity for them. I wouldn't tell somebody in Arkansas to go help with the Hawaii fight. And I wouldn't tell the Hawaiians to like, I mean, they can talk to the rep about DC, but they should probably focus on what they've got to do. And so it can feel hopeless. The best thing I've seen to stay in the fight and maintain some amount of hope is one, gather with other people. If you're not part of an indivisible group, or a working families party group or a sunrise group or whatever it might be, gather with your local constituency. And two, focus on what you can actually do. I saw somebody pointing out the Portland activists who are protesting outside the ICE headquarters or the ICE facility and have been doing it for a couple of months. That's incredible. That is incredible. That kind of work, which is local to Portland. I wouldn't tell somebody in California to fly up to Portland or somebody in Washington to come on out. But you can do that, but that's based on what's available to you. So joining with your local group, focusing on what you can accomplish, and trusting that if we all do that, that's going to ladder up to something good.
Yeah.
That's our recipe for staying engaged and maintaining some semblance of hope, even as things are quite dark.
I also think we've got to understand some of these escalations, not as like moments of strength, but as the kinds of escalations you make because your position is not actually as strong as you'd like it to be, right? Donald Trump has just spent a month like reeling from the Epstein story. Congressional Republicans had to shut down the House in order and leave for vacation in order to kill that story for just a little while, right? This is the kind of escalation. Now, I'm not, and frankly, I don't go in for the whole like it's a distraction discourse. I think that can be a little bit overstated. But this guy has an approval rating under 40% and he is trying to look strong right now. And so he is picking a target where he can like assert and put in the National Guard without the kind of pushback that a Governor Newsom and a Karen Bass were able to mount in California. This is not the move of somebody who is extremely strong. It's the move of somebody who figured out a target that he could plausibly attack.
Yep. Okay, back to our regular scheduled
Yeah.
programming. To the questions, Stephen asks, what are some? Oh, wait, we just answered Stephen's questions. Carrie says the Republican majority in the House is razor thin, which raises the real possibility Dems could regain control before the 2026 midterms. Can't afford to wait until 2026. Must explore opportunities to regain some level of power beforehand. Is there any effort underway to make it happen? Are people looking at possible paths to reclaim control? After all, it's entirely possible that some Republicans may not want to be complicit in an authoritarian takeover. I'm just kind of summarizing. Should we be putting pressure on our House representatives to resign now? Carrie, well, I wish I lived in that world. Leah, I was just talking.
Yeah,
So
I
you,
wish I
you go
shared the
ahead.
optimism. I mean, no, I look, I think that's a very reasonable and human ask. And we have seen a decent number of Republicans sort of say, this is my last term. I don't want to do this anymore. These are not courageous people. They are not doing this out of like some kind of deep
No.
patriotic duty. That's a different form of cowardice, just to be candid with you. Um, I don't think based on there are some places where we might be able to like eke out an extra seat, right? So like the Tennessee seventh race is coming up. There is a possibility there for a special election. There are isolated special elections. I don't think an overarching strategy of hoping to flip the House before 2026 is super realistic based on the current numbers and what we've got. And I don't think that, frankly, I just don't think that appeals to these folks better angels, or pressure on them to resign is necessarily going to help a ton. These are folks who are far more afraid of Donald Trump than they are afraid of Democratic accountability right now.
I think that the big ugly bill advocacy fight was really eye-opening for me because we had one theory was these vulnerable House Republicans can be pushed on this because they can't vote for a deeply unpopular bill and then win re-election. And what we found is, yeah, they basically did. To Leah's point, they're more scared of Donald Trump and MAGA than they are of pressure. And if you're waiting for Republicans in Congress to listen to their better angels, you'll be waiting quite a long time. The part of your question, though, Carrie, that I think is spot on is we can't afford to wait until 2026. There are a set of people in the political ecosystem, even on our side, that are saying, "Oh, well, we've really got to show up next year." And I don't think we can wait 15 or 16 months in order to push back against the authoritarians. The entire reason why No King's Day went from a day of mobilization on No Kings to 3 trainings on strategic non-cooperation was because we didn't believe pushing people into and now let's prepare for the midterms would be adequate. We are worried about the media institutions and the universities and the businesses and the law firms that are buckling to pressure right now. And we believe unless we organize and apply pressure now, like good luck getting to a November 2026 with free and fair elections. So I agree with you. We can't wait. I don't think our focus should be on getting the Republicans to resign because I just don't think we're going to get traction there. If we could get traction there, I'd be there. I just don't think it's realistic. Lori asks, it's getting very scary day by day as this authoritarian power grab becomes more real. It's in plain sight, and yet the masses are not taking seriously or waking up. Yes, we all are, but it's going to take more than just us. How can we push the Dems in Congress or some celebrities to do something out of the box, outrageous even, in order to get the attention of the people in mass numbers? If we don't grow and get louder soon, we will lose our democracy and the election will no longer matter. This is more or less what we were saying.
Yeah.
Are there people in high places strategizing something big to wake people up? I know there's no white knight and clearly no leader. It needs to be us, but this is not business as usual. And we need people who are not positioned to drop everything every day to do what's needed. Um, Leah, you get kind of the basic idea here. I think I'm largely aligned with Lori about the need.
I'm extremely aligned, and I wish I could tell you that there was like a secret room where Senate Democrats are planning their like big, bold, brilliant standout moment. And if they have that room, they have not invited us. Let's put it that way. I think we're in a moment, and I don't, I'm going to be very real with folks. We are in a period where courage is going to have to come bottom up. Like
Yeah.
that is simply where we are. If elites were going to save us, they would have stepped in by now. They will take their courage from us. That is the whole idea behind hands off. It's the whole idea behind No Kings. The idea with the training is not that we're going to have a training and we're all going to like know about authoritarianism. It's that we're going to take that training and we're going to call together 5 people in our synagogue or our church, and we're going to go in to the rabbi and we're going to say, hey, or I don't know, whatever Christian version of that is, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to say, hey, why have you not been talking about ICE? Why have you not been actually speaking out in this moment? We're going to go into our local businesses and we're going to say, hey, are you going to post this poster? Because we need to see that you're actually on our side and that you're on the side of our community. And then people are going to see that poster and they're going to go into the shop and they're going to say, thank you for doing that. And then the business leader is going to say to his, friends, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from this, and they're going to post their signs. And then when ICE shows up, they're going to look up and down the street and they're going to see a massive bunch of signs that say that they are not welcome. And they're going to be like, oh shit, this is not good. And they're going to be like, I hate my job. And they're going to, be like, I didn't actually sign up for this in the first place. It's an ongoing like series of ripple effects where individual acts of courage are going to trigger additional acts of courage, are going to trigger additional acts of defection. Celebrities will speak out when they see that a zillion people will stand behind them, okay? Like there are people who are brave and they will do it before that, but a lot of them, they're thinking about their endorsement deals. They're thinking about,
Yeah.
are they going to get cast in the next thing that they want to do by CBS? And they will speak out when they think that the popular support that they will experience for being brave is bigger than the risk that CBS is going to get mad at them. I don't just cast. Does CBS cast people in anything? But I guess like Yellowstone or something. But anyways, point being, like I wish that I could tell you that there was like a secret plan for like an elite level like moment that will clarify the stakes for everyone, and there's not. What there is painstaking local spirited organizing that pushes back in our universities, in our faith institutions, in our PTAs, in our local indivisible groups, at our mobilizations. That's what we can do.
The only thing I'd add is this, it can feel just impossible. Like, how are we going to do this? How is it possible that there isn't some elite that's going to take care of this? And just over the last 7 months, think about where the Democratic Party was and where they are today. 7 months ago, Gavin Newsom was interviewing what Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and folks like that on a podcast to show that he could bridge build to the MAGA movement. And today he's out there throwing punches.
That's right.
He's
That's
out
right.
there threatening to redistrict the entire state. He's calling this a constitutional crisis and existential for our democracy. This isn't to bash Gavin Newsom. This is how it should work. This is how elites like him respond is they see mass movement. The thing that changed in between January of this year and now was two of the largest mass movement protests in modern American history that proved to elites, oh wow, there's actually demand for this. When you have 20,000 people on a Zoom with Gene Wu from Texas, what that shows is, oh, wow, people are actually jazzed up. Most of the time, people are not paying attention. Politics is a niche issue. 30% of the population actually pays attention to politics closely. These electeds are used to a handful of people showing up at their town halls or their events. When we demonstrate that there is demand for us, they follow us. It's not just a theory. This is how it's worked repeatedly. It's frustrating that it comes down to us, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. And that's why we're here to figure out how do we show that in an effective way? How do we pull these elites in our direction? One thing just to flag, there is a primary season coming up. So if you've got a Democrat who is not seeing the writing on the wall,
Yeah.
then they should be changed. You should get a new Democratic leader. We'll talk about that more in future. What's the plans? Okay, Eric asks, Orchard City Indivisible. Hey, Eric,
Mhm.
in San Jose. Similar to its support of congressional redistricting in Democratic trifecta blue states to counter redistricting efforts in Republican red states, is Indivisible in favor of blue donor states withholding from the federal government the federal taxes that it typically collects and pays to the feds, essentially starving the feds and red recipient states? How would we go about pursuing this action? For folks who aren't familiar, this idea of donor states is, every state gets some amount of money from the federal government and sends some amount of money through taxes. California is an example of a donor state. They send far more in federal taxes than they get from the feds. Texas is an example of the opposite. They get far more from the federal government than they send in taxes. So I have heard this tactic proposed. We haven't seen it systematically organized. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I think I'm in favor of states being entrepreneurial and trying to figure out how to effectively push back against an overreaching federal government. So if there were a way to operationalize this to pick a strategic fight with Trump and the feds who are overreaching, I'm in favor. But Leah, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on this, or have you seen this play out in some way?
I don't have an immediate reaction to that specific tactic, in part because I just don't, I like mechanically, I'm not sure about exactly how it works. I do think that there's just a lot of leverage that blue states have economically that we need to encourage blue state leadership to tap into, right? They have pension funds, they have comptrollers who are making decisions about investments. There are actually like a lot of tools within the arsenal of a blue state that are economic in nature that are not being systematically deployed.
There was a good op-ed by our friends Arkady and Sarah Knight
Hmm.
recently. Was a Washington Post
I think
op-ed
so, yeah.
on what it looks like to fight back, and it hits specifically on this issue, which is part of it is, Eric, to your point, part of it, yes, redistricting, great, but Leah, to your point, exercising um, the economic might of these blue states is possible. It requires some creativity. It's a new front, but we should be exploring. So we'll follow up to this. I'll make sure the email that comes after this email, we'll point to that op-ed so y'all can take a look. Carol asks, what do you think is the top priority for this week? Name one, please. Oh, great. What a good prompt, Carol. Wait, can we each name one?
No, I don't think that's really the spirit of the
Okay.
question.
Well, what would you say, Leah?
I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna say you host a community gathering, and at that community gathering, you go through those CTAs that we outlined and you figure out which one makes the most sense for you.
I think it's going to be hard for people to get a community gathering knit together for the rest of this
Okay,
week.
if we're talking about literally something that an action that you can take by yourself without any organization, that's a different question.
It's Saturday.
That's it. Yeah,
I think it's
it's
Saturday. I
Saturday.
mean, because
Yeah.
that is a national day of action. Look, it's been thrown together very quickly. There are anchor events around the country, but it's not at the scale of No King's Day, which took months to plan. But we would like to see more people out. So I mean, I think if you're like, what can I do in the next 3 days of this week?
Yeah,
That's my
good
gut,
flag, good
Leah. Is
flag.
that's probably is show up on Saturday to push back against redistricting, show up in support of the Texas Dems, and then I would look ahead to what we can do to support DC, which is really on the forefront.
Yeah.
Okay, Suze Brockman asks, the No Kings rallies were so successful, in part because the concept is one that bridges many divides, is easily understood, and is short, sweet, and very powerful. It really does hit most Americans in the heart in terms of what America means. I would love for Indivisible and allies to build on that success and plan another or many other No Kings rallies this fall. It is so funny that you say that, Suze. I'm not ready to announce anything yet. We are in deep
We're in
consultation with
conversation.
partners across the ecosystem, but stay tuned, stay tuned very closely. Watch this space, as Rachel Maddow
Yeah.
says. We are going to be announcing a big, major national mobilization with the No Kings Coalition in the very soon future. I'm very excited that it's coming together. It's going to be big. It's going to be awesome. Everybody who was part of it last time, I think, is going to want to be part of this. People who saw it happen are like, "Oh, that was cool. We should have done that."
Yeah.
We're going to get them. We're going to welcome them in.
And I will say, we've observed the same thing that
Yeah.
No Kings is the phrase is living on in
Yeah.
ways that give us a lot of hope for that as something that can continue as like a unifying motif for a broader population.
Yeah. So just looking at Sally's question, just because it was
Yeah.
like we kind of covered this a bit. Seems like the movement is losing steam. People are discouraged and hopeless. I do think there's something about a summer slump that is real. That when you're building movement power, a lot of people go on vacation. It gets very hot. It gets harder to show up. I think one critique that I would accept too is we went from no kings directly into trainings rather than no kings directly into like here's the next mobilization. And so there's been more time in between the mobilizations, which could like present a oh maybe there's less energy out there. For y'all's benefit, like what we see on the back end is there's a lot of action happening, but it's not busting through to the national consciousness. And I think we're all feeling that, right? Like No Kings was incredible. It was everywhere. It was beyond political. It was cultural. What's the next thing, and are we getting that? Like the 1 million rising trainings are great, but they're relatively insular. They're about building our skills and preparing for the next fight.
Well, and they're personal and
Yes.
intimate, right?
Yeah.
Like they're designed to be in your house, and so we're not trying to attract lots of attention and let people know where your house is, right? And so, it's a different vibe.
It
Yeah.
is. But Sally, I don't think I don't want to dismiss the concerns. We want to build momentum as well. I'm excited for the next big mobilization that we're announcing. And I think as we get into the fall, this is going to pick up steam.
The one other thing that I will just say on this is like I hear you and I feel it. And also I'm always thinking about this thing from Hardy Merriman, who's one of the former head of the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict, talking about nonviolent social movements and successful challenges to authoritarian regimes. And what he said is, every single movement, like one of the sheer unifying factors across every single successful movement is that there's a slump when people do not think that they are winning, and they get really frustrated with each other because they don't feel like they're getting there. So that is something that we just have to accept we're gonna have moments along the way where it feels like we are backsliding. It feels like we are not making progress. Those are the moments to dig in, to think about what tactics, what strategies, what do we need to do next in order to keep moving.
Indeed. Okay. Mary said from Indivisible Southern Delaware says, I feel like those who live in solidly blue states are looking to put some effort into helping red and purple states. We are at the mercy of what happens in those states. What can those of us who live in blue states do to help states like Texas, particularly as it relates to addressing threats to voting rights and communicating what is in Project 2025 to those who aren't currently informed? I'm ready to hop on a plane or take a road trip if necessary. Mary, you don't need to hop on a plane or take a road trip. I don't think that's the most efficient use of your time. What you can do is make Delaware a shining city on a hill. Make Delaware on the forefront of the fight against fascism. And so we actually have an entire we'll list the link. There's a webpage for Blue State Defiance. There are 15 Democratic trifectas in this country, states that have a governor that's a Democrat and a state legislature that is controlled by the Democrats. There's a lot that you can do. And that includes making Delaware a safe place for those in other states that are under threat. That also includes making sure that Delaware is safe from the federal overreach that is going to be likely coming to a town near you in the form of ICE or other militarization. So I would encourage you to look at your own political conditions in Delaware and ask yourself, what is it that this state could do that it's not currently doing? Are we appropriately protecting our residents from ICE? Are we appropriately pushing back on Trump and his overreach? Are we appropriately showing up in defense of universities and businesses and nonprofits and media institutions that are being pushed? And if not, how can we push here? I appreciate that the impulse to be like, I'll fly to Austin. That's great. But actually, you can do good in Delaware. You really can. Your opportunities for Delaware are just going to be different than what's available to folks in Texas or Arkansas or California or Washington.
Well, and just to like go on this example with Texas and the redistricting situation, when the Texas legislators flee, what they are asking for is for blue states to focus on building up their own power to respond, right? They are saying we need a response on redistricting in California, in New York. We need these other places because we don't actually have the conditions in Texas to successfully stop this right now. We don't actually have credible people on the outside that are building up their own power to fight for us. So think about how you're building power for like a muscular response within Delaware, and that is going to be part of the answer.
Yep. Ron asks, this is a question about basically an Amazon boycott through Christmas, and something that we've brought up every few What's the Plans we get into this, and I'm in favor of figuring out a way to push Amazon. The issue is how enormous Amazon is, and like what can you do to structure a boycott in a way that's actually felt? Because you don't want to just start with a tactic. We talk about this all the time. It's goals, strategies, tactics. I think the goal is simple. Bezos and Amazon are fascist aligned business. They're enormous. It would be great if we could push them in some way. The strategy to push them makes sense. Using our consumer power makes sense. The tactic of a boycott, though, the question is how do you operationalize that in a way that doesn't just make us feel good, but it actually causes the effect that we would want it to cause. I think there are some smart people who've been doing boycotts this year that have had great effect, like Target. The Target boycott has been really effective. The Tesla takedown protests have been very effective. I have yet to see a organized campaign at a national level on Amazon, like cancel your Amazon Prime, buy locally, and here's how you can do it easily. I would be interested in that. I'm still not seeing it though. If folks are participating in that or folks are seeing this organizing going on, let us know. I would be very curious to highlight this for Indivisible groups and see if it catches fire. I don't know if we would be the ones to drive it forward. It's just not been our expertise historically. But I I'm interested in what we can do to push these huge industry leaders to stop just uh, going along with the fascist takeover. But Leah, you've talked about you've done a lot on boycotts. I
Yeah,
don't.
I think you covered it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Ron. I wish I had a more direct question, but we'll try. I'm trying to be real with you about where we are on this. I think we should continue talking though. Gail, according to the Washington Post this week, leaked internal Pentagon documents indicate that the Trump administration is evaluating plans to establish a domestic civil disturbance quick reaction force. I saw this too. So this is made up of National Guard troops. Reportedly, the troops would be rapidly deployed to American cities facing protests or other unrest. This is another example of Trump's unwillingness or willingness to use the military against American citizens, and another step closer to a coup or dictatorship. No good can come of this. Yes, yes. How can we continue to peacefully express grievances as protected by the First Amendment while fighting against this rising fascism? First of all, I would say it is illegal. He does not have the power to use the military to engage in um, normal police activity. He is not allowed to do that. He says that he has the ability to do that. He does not have the ability to do that. So he will be taken to court over this. And also, that's not enough. He doesn't really care what's legal or not. We all understand that he's breaking laws left and right. So it is important that it's illegal, and we shouldn't give him a pass on that. And we should support the legal groups that are bringing these cases. Full stop. But how can we continue to peacefully express our grievances as protected by the First Amendment? The answer is you continue to peacefully express your grievances as protected by the First Amendment. He wants to cow you into submission. Like, that is why he is militarizing LA. That is why he is militarizing DC. This is why he's threatening other blue cities. He wants you scared. He wants you thinking he has the ability to crack down on you for peacefully protesting. The single best thing that you can do to protect your ability to exercise your First Amendment rights is to exercise your First Amendment rights. That is really it. And this isn't just coming from me. This is what the experts in authoritarianism say. We got to organize. The reason why we show up on Saturday is not just for redistricting. It's because you show up on Saturday so you can show up for the next No Kings protest, so that you can show up for the midterm, so that you can continue to organize. And if you don't show up, if you say, well, yeah, he's doing that and like that's kind of scary, then you lose it. These rights do not protect themselves. It gets rusty, it gets stale. He's going to be able to run over us. We got to show up. This is why we organize. This is why we do these events. This is why we do these single day mobilizations, is to protect those rights, because if we don't, they don't exist.
This is also just, this is not academic or hypothetical, right? There were a lot of threats to call up the National Guard. There were red states that had governors calling up the National Guard in advance of No Kings, right? And, folks had to make decisions. And I know there are people on the call who had protests in places where that was a real and possible threat. And what we collectively understood in that moment was, if you pull down your action, if you decline to go out in that moment, because of that threat that they're going to put the National Guard out there, they have successfully gotten you to back away from your rights, right? And they didn't even have to mobilize. And so fundamentally, the answer, there's not a neat trick to fix this. There is simply continuing to work and build that muscle.
Yep. Pamela asks, can Indivisible National please hold a training session for local group leaders to provide security guidance for group tech infrastructures as well as personal and group security?
That's a good question.
The guide provided in November was helpful, be more beneficial to have a presentation and discussion on the topic. That is a great question, Pamela. For folks who didn't read, we did have some like kind of high level information about security during autocratic breakthrough moments in the original guide, but it was kind of 101, Pamela. I think you're right. And maybe that we do get security questions regularly. I will take this back to the team. We actually have a new digital organizing director who's starting pretty soon that we just hired, who will be taking on some work like this. So, great question, Pamela. I can't promise it to you, but it's not the first time we've got questions about security. So I'll take it back to the team. We'll just make a note and see if we can follow up on it. That's great.
It's a great flag.
Good flag.
Yeah. And I'll just add on that, we know security is a big challenge. It is a big challenge across the progressive ecosystem. The demand for kind of aligned security and support is really big right now, and we are trying to address and meet it, and particularly in advance of future mobilization. So hear you more generally. We'll take it back to the team.
Yeah, that's great. Another Pamela asks, how can we address ageism in our movement? I know that Leah has discussed it in the past, but last night on the 1 Million Rising called boomers were called out negatively a few times. I did see that. I did note that. I've been hearing anti-boomer rhetoric for decades, maybe because it's such a weird name that's easy to say in a scathing, dismissive way. I've also heard OK Zoomer. Have you seen that about
No.
Gen Z?
No.
It's a similar thing. How boomers are people born during a certain period. Some are jerks, some are not, some are rich, some are greedy, some are not. Totally agree with all this. Like every generation, I'm just going to skip. Like every generation, they are limited by their experience and their history and living. They are also responsible as individuals for how they rise to the moments. I think this is spot on, Pamela. Like there are good. Leah and I are both millennials. There are good millennials and bad millennials. There are good Gen Z and bad Gen Z. There are good Gen X and bad Gen X. I would say when you look at it around the Indivisible movement, you see a lot of boomers. Boomers have been largely leading the movement in communities all across the country for the last 8 years. So for the boomers in the Indivisible movement, I have nothing but love. I mean, come on. These are the folks who have been showing up to save the Affordable Care Act, to build the blue wave in 2018, to impeach the bastard in 2019, to win in 2020. Like the boomers have been doing a lot of good, and some boomers have not been doing good. That's the world. So if you join an Indivisible group, I don't think you'll see a lot of ageism. You'll see a lot of fellow boomers out there. And it's interesting. This is the inverse of a question we often get, which is like, how do we get more young people in? Because we've got a
Yeah.
lot of boomers. But Leah, you've thought about this some.
I think one part of this that I will particularly name, some folks have heard me say this before, but if you look back at like social movements in American history, like the two consistent groups that are kind of like the shock troops of social movements are women and retired people. And so like we are affirmatively a place that appreciates the contributions, the flexibility, the like commitments of folks who are older and who are organizing. And I also just think it's important to name specifically the intersection there, that there is a particular kind of really problematic kind of ageism that is aimed at older women who are supposed to be invisible in our society and who are invisibilized in so many ways. And I think often when we see kind of representations of the organizing that we do, something that comes out is like a kind of combination of sexism and ageism directed at older women. And so full agreement here. I will say one thing that I just experienced is like a lot of self denigration. Like I see people who are like, oh, it's only the old people here. And like, look, we want to diversify. We want to have younger people in our movement. We care about that. And also we can recognize the value and the importance and the contributions that older people make at the same time. So I think I honestly think like part of it is just everyone being attentive to like how do you actually create that environment that appreciates everyone for what they bring.
And stand indivisible together, you might
Staying
say.
indivisible.
Great. Okay, Hope says, in places like New York City, which the regime is threatening to invade next, one of my concerns is that the people will not be ready to maintain strategic nonviolent discipline, even if/when state actors or counter-protesters resort to violence. I heard a trainer from Nonviolent Peace Force describe the challenge as learning to take the nervous system's natural fight response and use it to form a shield instead of a weapon. I love that. I feel like we need a Nashville-like training program ASAP to be ready for this kind of threat. Can Indivisible help with this?
It's a good question. It's a good question. And it's something that we should get deeper into. Just to be totally honest, I think part of the first piece is just like regular and consistent nonviolent peaceful mobilizations in advance of a moment like that. But I hear you that when we're talking about kind of higher order actions, that there is also higher order training. So it's a good flag and we'll take it into consideration.
I, it is a good flag. I will say regularly over the last 8 months, we have gotten folks feedback as we have prepared for national mobilizations of folks saying, well, that's obviously going to devolve into violence and that's going to be a disaster. And so we maybe shouldn't do this or we shouldn't go forward with a day of action. Um, and I got to say, we have been demonstrating our commitment to peaceful protest better than, I don't know, any movement that I've seen in recent history. Like you look at the hands-off protests, you look at the No Kings protests in 2,300 communities without a single act of violence from the protesters out there. I mean, it is like incredible the number of people who are showing up in places like New York or Chicago or in deep red areas with no incidents reported. And I know the other side is going to try to instigate, the other side is going to try to paint us as violent protesters, but we've demonstrated through our actions two of the largest protests in American history in the last 4 months that have been entirely peaceful and powerful and joyful. And I think part of this is training that we should give to folks to teach them how to do this, but this is on all of us to like embrace that, embrace the principles of nonviolence when we're talking about this work. It's not just kumbaya language. This is hardcore strategic logic that nonviolence works against fascists and violent tactics just don't work. Even if you don't oppose them for more reasons, they're unstrategic. And so we should always be talking about our work as this is the strategic way we do this. But point taken, Hope, we can also look into more trainings too. Sherry asks, oh, somebody asked, hey, where are these questions coming from? I'm not making them up. These are questions that you all are submitting and then you all are voting on, and we're literally just going through democratically.
If you look down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's like a black toolbar and there's a Q&A box. So you can click on the Q&A box and you can see we're taking them mostly off the top and you can vote on them or
Yep.
submit them if there's something that you want to get covered that's not getting covered.
And we try to get through as many as we can.
And we try to cover as many as we can.
So Sherry asks, how do we stand up against and protect ourselves from the tech giants, Facebook, Google, Instagram, and huge corporations? Trump himself is not a threat. It's his whole administration, these industry giants who are supporting these fascist oligarchy take over. We boycott Teslas. Why aren't we boycotting these others? I'm receptive to this take. I think the tech bros that are as fascist as the MAGA bros, and there's something about their agenda that it's scary stuff, y'all. When you look at, I find some parts of AI to be useful, but when you look at like the ideology behind some of these tech fascists, it is not just tech forward. It is anti-human. Like they actively are trying to zero out the human component to their work, and they view humanity and they view democracy as like a nuisance, a problem to be solved, people to be managed and carted away if possible, so that they can concentrate their wealth and power and move forward with unfettered access to all of the nation's riches and wealth and capabilities. And it is scary stuff. It is really scary stuff. We're living through a time where both wealth and power is being concentrated in the hands of the few. I think Bernie and AOC on their oligarchy tour are exactly right. And also, we're living through a time of authoritarian breakthrough. And what we know in these moments is the best thing that we can do to push back now so we can live and fight another day is to build a huge coalition that says no to this fascist takeover, identify the places where the fascists are pushing forward deeply unpopular policies and say, okay, everybody, we might not agree on what 2029 is going to be, but we agree we do not want $171 billion plugged into a secret police force that terrorizes blue cities. We can all agree on that. That's the challenge we're engaged in right now, is building that big coalition that isn't going to agree on everything, might not agree on my take on AI or my take on the tech folks, but can agree that we don't want a fascist federal government. I am very curious, though, about how this plays out as we head into 2028, but I'm mainly focused on getting to 2028 first. Oh, great question from Lee.
It's a great.
Well, maybe we'll end on Lee's question. I'm loving this question. Okay. Lee's question is Democrats have to win the midterms, but scammy, dim connected PACs are making it even harder. We're lagging behind 2018 fundraising in polls. A major report from political scientist Adam Banika shows ex-Dem staffers running shady PACs that spam voters, damage the brand, and deliver almost no ROI. ActBlue gave a token response, but the DNC, DCCC, DSCC stay silent. This mess is self-inflicted and fixable. How do we force action before it costs us the votes?
This is a really good
It's
question.
such a good question, Lee.
Yeah. Well, so first I'll just say there has been some organizing efforts going on to try to get shifts within ActBlue that did lead to some shifts within ActBlue over the last week. We are actually signatories to a letter from a bunch of folks across the progressive ecosystem being like, this stuff has to stop. It is harmful. It is harmful to anybody who is trying to do good faith organizing activation, even just communicating about donations for legitimate causes, right? What I would say is I think there's probably some collective organizing to be done about who is using these firms, right? Because currently the take that people have is some version of, oh, I'm using them, it kind of sucks, but we're using it because it works. Well, how do we make it stop working, right? Do you give to people who send you the like scammy emails? Do you give to people who are texting you who did not, who did not obtain your number by your consent? We've actually got to kind of collectively make those things not work for people in order for this to be cracked down. And we need to have pressure on folks like ActBlue in order to have them take action to police some of these bad actors.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, I would turn everybody's eyes towards the next electoral fight that we're in. I think there's a tendency to go directly to November 2026, but that's actually not the next fight. The next fight is November of this year when we get to fight in Virginia and we get to fight in New Jersey. And I would be looking to candidates in New Jersey and candidates in Virginia who could need your support. The candidates will use that money pretty well. Then when we look beyond this November's elections, it's not the midterms yet, it's primary season. It is primary season where we get to choose what is the Democratic Party that leads us into the midterms. We all get to make that choice. And so if I'm advising people out in the world, I would not start with general election because that's the next fight. That's after primary season. I would start with what are the PACs, what are the organizations, who are the candidates who are taking on the status quo and saying we need a fight back faction of the Democratic Party that's ascendant. and I would give to those candidates, I would give to those organizations, I would give to those PACs. A lot of folks will be fully focused on the general election. That's cool. That's fine. That's great. But that's not the next fight. That will come after primary season. Then we'll all rally around whoever wins the primaries, whether we like them or not. We will rally around them. But focus on Virginia and New Jersey heading into November, and then focus beyond that on primary. Pick your favorites, and let's build a Democratic Party that we can be proud of. Okay,
Okay.
that was the plan,
That's the
Leah.
plan this week.
That's the plan. Hey, we really missed y'all last
Yeah.
week. It is great to be here. It's great to be building this together. We're looking forward to next week. We will be back at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, as per usual. And Leah, we'll talk more about the plan next week.
All right.
See you all that. See you there on Saturday too. Bye, y'all.
Bye.